Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. Sort of a bizarre case we have here, and I'll put the thumbnail up on the screen. Sheriff shoots the judge. I've never seen that before anywhere in this world, and it's just quite a bizarre thing. In West Liberty, Kentucky, and the sheriff's name is Sean Mickey Steins, and the judge is Judge Kevin Mullins, who you see is on the thumbnail. He's up in the right corner there. And the how and the who and the what, we know all of that. What we don't know is the why. And that's probably going to be one of the many disturbing things in this case. You know, a man who lived his life enforcing the law and lived a righteous life, and all of a sudden goes into a judge's chambers, who happens to also not just be a judge, but his friend, and shoots and kills the judge right inside his chambers. So many of us, all of us, are asking, well, obviously this was caught on video, so there's no question on the who, and even his attorneys aren't questioning whether he's the guy or not. He's right on video, shooting and taking the judge's life right in his chambers. So the bizarre thing about this, of course, is why did this happen? What the hell is going on? Why did the sheriff kill the judge? You know, and that's what we have to find out. And that is what everyone wants to know in this case. So, folks, hold on to your hats, hold on to your seats, hold on to your wig, your toupee. You could see I don't have a toupee. I barely have any hair, because you're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10th and Ranch Bike Rider.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet online, the game starts here. So I'm going to bring our resident expert on everything with the law, and he's retired NYPD Sergeant, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, attorney. Welcome to the show, Professor Michael Geary.
Bill, good afternoon. Good to see you. Welcome, everybody. Welcome.
You know, Mike, it is so, this case is quite bizarre. I don't think I've ever seen a case where you have a law enforcement officer shoot and kill a judge. I've never seen that anywhere before. I mean, if you've seen it before, I'd like to hear the story, but it's quite bizarre. And to see this man, everyone from this area knows each other. They're all like friends, So investigators are trying to determine why a Kentucky sheriff allegedly shot and killed a district judge after they argued inside the judge's chambers, according to the Kentucky State Police. District Court Judge Kevin Mullins, he's age 54, was found around 3 p.m. Thursday with gunshot wounds and pronounced dead at the Letcher County Courthouse in Whitesburg. Kentucky State Police Trooper Matt Gayhart said at a Thursday evening news conference. Letcher County Sheriff Sean M. Steins, he's 43, whose role made him responsible for judge's personal security, shot Mullins after an argument inside the judge's chambers, a preliminary police investigation revealed. Steins is now facing a first-degree murder charge, according to the state police. Steins turned himself in after shooting and was arrested at the scene without incident. He's cooperating with authorities. There are cameras inside the building, and all witnesses will be interviewed, according to the investigators. This community is small in nature, and we're all in shock, according to the investigators. So, Mike, you've watched this. You've watched the video. We'll go over later, and it's disturbing to watch, but we'll check out the video later. The big thing here, Mike, is why? Why?
We got the who, we got the what, we got the where, we got the how, but we don't have the why. The one thing that drives people crazy, it's not absolutely necessary when the prosecutor presents their case to a jury later on at trial to present the why, so long as they get all the other questions answered. But everybody really wants to know why. Put it into context. Why would this happen? Sorry, I lost my earplug. Why would anybody do that to someone who's been a friend and a colleague for the better part of over 2 decades? And that's what's so disturbing. There's got to be a reason, because it seemed like a normal day. It started out a normal day in the middle of September, and they went to lunch together with a whole bunch of other people, as they normally do. Everything was just like normal. And after lunch, the sheriff leaves, and the other people go back to the courthouse to resume their jobs. And an hour later, there's a shooting. And I've never heard of this before. I've never, maybe in some other country, I've never heard of it here in the United States. It may have happened, but this is absolutely a almost unique set of circumstances. And everybody wants to know why. That is the big question. Hopefully, as we get close to the trial, it will be answered, but we'll do the best we can today.
Well, I'm hoping that we get some answers before the trial, because we'll all be asking. This is from Court TV. I want to play this with Vinnie Politan.
This is the town of Whitesburg in Letcher County.
Sorry, it stopped loading. Sorry, we had some technical difficulties here. Here we go.
Happened as the first court hearing takes place in Kentucky. Tonight, we'll show you exactly what happened in court and then break down the potential motive and what this trial will be all about as folks in Appalachia try to heal from this shocking courthouse shooting. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. We learned a lot. We learned a lot today about the shooting of Judge Kevin Mullins. First of all, what became very clear is that the judge knew he was going to die moments before he died. That was crystal clear. He was apparently unarmed. The sheriff had a gun, and it was pointed right at the judge, and he started firing. The judge knew what was going to happen. He knew how it was going to end. The reason we know is there is shocking video of what happened inside the chambers. I'm going to show it to you in just a few moments. but the video is rolling. There's no audio, it's just video, but you can see everything that transpired inside the judge's chambers. Now, it is kind of unusual to have a video camera in the judge's chambers, but other things have happened in that chambers that likely required it. Sexual assaults, not by the judge, by one of the sheriff's deputies inside those chambers. My guess is that's why they have a camera now. Probably didn't have it beforehand, but they have it now. And it recorded everything that happened, which brings us back every time we do the story. Why? Why would a sheriff, knowing that as soon as he does this, he's going to be locked up, knowing as soon as he does this, he'll be charged with murder, knowing as soon as he does this, he is facing the rest of his life in a potential death penalty sentence when he does this? He knows the law. And see the sheriff pointing the gun. You can see the judge in the corner trying to take cover, but it just doesn't happen. And then the sheriff exits. Once again, you can see right in that moment, the judge knows what's about to happen. Now we don't hear the conversation, so we don't know what's being said, but you can tell by the body language. You can tell by what we see.
You know, Mike, before the shooting, first of all, they had lunch together with a group of people. And something was overheard at the lunch date, and the judge said to him, "Would you like to meet in private in my chambers?" And some people heard that, and they said that the sheriff looked a little bit upset.
That's right.
So then they go back to the judge's chambers. And now, why don't you speak about the interaction with the phones?
Yeah, Bill, it appears that everybody went back to the courthouse to resume their jobs after lunch. And then within a few minutes, as the judge is in his chambers doing his, I guess, getting for his afternoon docket, the sheriff comes in, and the sheriff, apparently there's a much longer video, and you would see what happened beforehand. And according to testimony at the preliminary hearing, it shows the sheriff trying to make a phone call to his daughter, and his daughter not picking up. And then he apparently got the judge's phone and saw that his own daughter's phone number was on the judge's cell phone as a contact, and he called his daughter using the sheriff's phone. And apparently he didn't get any sort of answer. And then at that point, there may have been words exchanged, because you can't hear, unfortunately, on the audio. There's no audio. And then he just pulls out his service pistol and just stands like 3 feet from the judge. And the judge is sitting, and he shoots the judge numerous times while the judge falls and tries to hide a little bit. And you could see it was really graphic. But there was a very brief exchange. It wasn't like the sheriff went into the judge's chambers and argued for like 10 or 15 minutes in some sort of prolonged, heated argument. It was very brief. There was a few possible raised voice heard outside of the chambers from someone who wasn't sure which voice it was, the judge's or the sheriff. And then the shooting started. And after the shooting, the judge is lying mortally wounded. And you could see, if they showed a tiny bit more, you'll see the sheriff leave with his gun pointing down at the ground. And he immediately surrendered to people who heard the shooting and came running. He immediately surrendered to them and said, "Treat me fair," something like that, or at least treat me fair. And that was it. It was very brief, very brutal, very violent, but that's what makes it so odd. There wasn't a long buildup. It was a really very brief time frame from the time everybody returned to the courthouse, going into that judge's chambers, and the shooting, which makes it that much more inexplicable, that much more mysterious.
Mike, let's clear up some of and we don't know if we can totally clear them up, but of course, the
Right.
allegation or everyone's putting forth is that why did the judge have Sheriff Mickey Stein's daughter, 15 years old, I believe she is, right?
Yes.
His 15-year-old daughter, why did he have her phone number on his phone? So, of course, it runs rampant that perhaps he was having an affair with her, or but it's not an affair if she's 15 years old. It's called rape.
Right.
But
That's right.
I don't know if we have any allegations of this. Of course, rumors are running rampant. The other thing that might have some truth to it is that the sheriff's wife and his family were she was looking to get divorced, and she was looking to leave, and perhaps, and again, no facts yet, perhaps the judge was helping Mickey Stein's wife and giving her legal advice, which of course is out of his purview. Since he's a judge, he's not allowed to do that, but that there's no reason for someone to get shot to death.
Right.
But there is no clear-cut reason why. So let me just go back to the courtroom and watch some of the hearing.
It's my understanding that video lasted much longer, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And have you had an opportunity to review the video
I have.
of the prior incident?
I have.
And can you describe for us what happened immediately prior to the clip that we saw?
Sheriff Steins uses his telephone to make some phone calls. He then borrows Judge Mullin's cell phone and appears to make a call on that. And that led to what you just saw.
Okay. So it's my understanding there were.
Mike, we're actually getting some information from the chat that, in fact, the daughter is 17.
17.
Which still makes her underage. Perhaps in Kentucky, I think in New York State that is old enough. I think
That is old enough.
Over 16, or is it over 17?
17
to
or older.
consent?
You have to be 17, right?
Okay, 17. So 17 in New York State. I don't know what the law is in Kentucky. Anyway, thank you, folks in the chat. In fact, if we
Yes.
got it wrong and she is in fact 17, thank you. It changes it a little bit, but not totally.
Some people who were having a meeting with Judge Mullins prior to the sheriff's entry into the chambers. Is that correct?
Yes.
Have you identified those witnesses?
I don't know the names of them. There's about approximately 4 people in there. Then Sheriff Steins enters the judge's chambers and everybody else clears out.
Once the 4 people that were inside, but we don't know their names, once these 4 people had left the chambers, were they in an area adjacent where they could hear anything that was going on?
Yes, I believe some of them did remain in the next room.
Okay. And what did they tell us?
Do what?
What did they hear?
I've not been I wasn't part of those interviews.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, you're prepared for a preliminary hearing on a murder, and there are witnesses in an adjacent room.
I mean, they heard
Can I put
gunshots.
my question, please?
Yeah, please, that's the question.
Thank you, officer. So you are investigating a murder and testifying in a preliminary hearing, and there are witnesses who may have overheard what preceded this edited clip, yet you can't tell us today anything that they said?
I've not personally listened to those interviews. I've talked to the other officers that did those interviews.
Fair enough. And I mean, we're here at a preliminary hearing, as you know, that you can testify to hearsay. I'm asking you what they said.
They heard gunshots.
Okay. Was there any statements that they overheard?
Mike, I just want to bring something. Someone actually raised it in the chat. This detective did not do his job. And I would not be surprised if he's really good friends with the sheriff, because it's almost painful. The stuff coming out of his mouth, is almost flowing out painfully, like he doesn't want to say it because this guy's my friend.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
Billy,
this
when,
is like
yeah,
this is a small little town. He's from the Kentucky State Police, I believe.
police, right?
And
He's
he's
Kentucky
the
State
lead
Police.
investigator, but he said no shit. So what is he doing?
Yeah, it kind of hurts his credibility tremendously. This happened several weeks ago, okay, at least 2 weeks ago, maybe 2.5 weeks ago. And he's telling the court and he's telling the defense attorney and even the prosecutor and everybody's there that he actually hasn't seen these were probably taped, videotaped interviews. He hasn't seen the videotaped interviews. And at one point, he even says he hasn't even read the reports. All he has done is talk to the other detectives that he's leading. That to me is probably a mistruth. I don't want to say the word lie, but I think he's being a little evasive on that one, because after 2 weeks in a highly publicized murder case like this, I mean, you get a homicide, and it doesn't have to be someone who's very famous. You're going to be working maybe 24 to 48 hours straight before you get to see, a bed. You're working around the clock and you're doing as much as you possibly can, reading as much as you possibly can, interviewing people as much as you possibly can, reviewing everything you've got. I find that really, really incredible that he's saying what he's saying. Later on in the preliminary hearing, he even says at one point, they said, "Did you talk to the sheriff when you got there?" And he said, "Yes." And did you interrogate him? And he says, "No." And to me, I don't know. I'm a patrol sergeant. I don't know. Maybe it'd be a little different from your perspective as a detective sergeant. I found that slightly strange too. Why wouldn't you do an official interview and videotape it right there in the county courthouse? Why wouldn't you do that? It's really, really odd. I tell you, it's really odd, and I'm not too confident about this investigation.
Me either. Byington from the chat. Byington. I first thought it had something to do with the deputy getting sued, and the sheriff is also. Thought judge told sheriff he couldn't help him, but the phones, that's the key. Byington, we're going to get into it later. There was a case, of course, and of a Deputy Fields who was the bailiff. He worked for the judge, and he actually got convicted of rape of a jail inmate who he was using his position of power to have sex with her. And he got convicted, and now there's a huge civil suit. We'll address that later. I don't want to go there yet. There's a huge civil suit against, of course, that individual, Deputy Fields. And, of course, this would include the sheriff, since he's his boss, and, of course, the municipality that they work for. How could this happen in that? So could that also be a reason for this? And these crimes occurred inside Judge Mullin's office, and there never used to be video cameras. But as a result of those incidents, they installed video cameras. So could that also be, and again, we don't know the why yet, could that also be why the sheriff was all upset and took this out on the judge? That we don't know. And as I said, there's a lot of the whys, and the evidence, of course, that could potentially be a treasure trove of information is both the sheriff and the judge's cell phone. And they are currently in the custody of the state, forensically going through their cell phones to see if they can find the answers as to what occurred here.
Were heard?
No.
Were there raised voices?
There, one person stated that she didn't recognize him as being Judge Mullin's voice, but heard somebody say, "Help, help."
Of course, your investigation, did you ascertain that prior in the day there had been a lunch meeting between Sheriff Stein and Judge Mullin?
There was.
Pardon?
There was.
Okay. Sorry, I couldn't hear your response. I wasn't being trite. So where did this take place?
It's a restaurant called Streetside, and it's just down the street from the courthouse.
Okay. And it's my understanding there were a couple of other people who attended the luncheon.
There were several, yes.
Okay. And at some point after that, they wrapped up lunch and left, obviously, and went back to the courthouse. Are you aware of anything so far in your investigation that would tell us there was any issues at lunch between Judge
No,
Mullins and Sheriff Steins?
no,
But someone on behalf of the KSB has spoken to those witnesses?
yes, they've all been interviewed.
And there was nothing unusual that had arisen during that luncheon?
I was told that the judge made a statement to Mickey about, do we need to meet private in my chambers? That's all I was told.
Do you know the context of
I do
what
not.
the conversation was before that they would need to discuss in chambers?
I do not.
So it's my understanding that in the larger portion of the video that we haven't had access to, that there is a point when Sheriff Steins asked for to see the telephone of Judge Mullins.
Yes,
Is that a yes?
yes.
Yes. Okay.
It's like
And,
pulling
I
teeth
would
from this
presume
guy. You
that,
know,
you
I can't understand why it seems like he's being evasive. Like, why would you be evasive? You're working for the state, and it's like I can only think that he's friends with the sheriff. I can only because it's like the questions he's answering, he's not answering them willingly. It's like they got to pull it out of him, and it's not a good look, Mike.
Not at all. And anyone watching it, especially in law enforcement, you sit there and go, because we know a lot more than maybe a regular civilian looking at it, because, we've been testifying in court many times in preliminary hearings. You go before the grand jury, you've got pretrial motions, you're at the trial, you've got all of these things, and you're testifying. And, 99.999% of the time, you're doing your job as professionally as you can. There's no personal involvement other than, the pride of your work and making sure you do a good job. Here, this is several weeks now after the shooting, and he's got all these a number of investigators working for him. I think he mentioned at least 2 other names, and they've interviewed everybody. Everybody's been interviewed at that courthouse. They got phones, and he's sitting. It's almost painful. Like he doesn't even want to give the defense attorney. I know it's a defense attorney. It's not a DA. It's a defense attorney he's talking to, but it's like he barely wants to answer the question. His answers are, to me, it's like slightly evasive, and it ruins, to me, it hurts the credibility of what he's saying, because obviously it's incredible. Some of the things he's saying, he has not seen this. He has not seen that. I've not read the reports. Are you kidding? You have not read the reports after 2 weeks? I find that really incredible. And that hurts the credibility of law enforcement. Totally.
Mike, one of the things that, as part of my duties as a Manhattan North Homicide Sergeant, we would investigate police shootings.
Right.
And of course, who was there with us? Internal Affairs.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the shooting was a bad one, Internal Affairs would be the bad guys, and the thing is that they needed competent investigators to investigate a police shooting, because frankly, Internal Affairs wasn't up to it. They didn't understand what the hell was going on half the time,
Yeah.
And in the years since, Internal Affairs up for the NYPD has gotten better, because they force people to go into Internal Affairs that go in there kicking and screaming, but they forced real cops to go in there and to do, I think it's 18 months there or 24 months, whatever it is.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And so they had some competent people. But we would investigate police shootings. And one of the things at every police shooting, what's also on the scene is the union delegates for the police officers, which came with an attorney, and the department was told, do not question them, and then the NYPD has something called GO15.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. You can be asked questions specifically and narrowly related to your duties, but allegedly anything found out during those GO15 hearings could not be used criminally, but that was absolute bullshit because internal affairs or a DA would want to sit in and be like, no, you're not sitting in, you know? So it was abused over the years. So what usually happens is an attorney will say, no, the officer is not being interviewed. And if they threaten him with suspension, you know, the attorney would somehow get around that. But I don't know if Sheriff Steins immediately had an attorney representing him so that he wasn't interviewed by the police, because that would preclude you from being interviewed if you, as you know, if you had counsel. You want to explain that, Mike?
Yeah. As you said, if he had done the shooting and he was immediately apprehended, if he at that point said, I want an attorney, they wouldn't be able to talk to him, and they would have to say, okay, we're going to get him an attorney. They'd put him in a cell, and, they would do paperwork and they'd get the attorney there. And then only if the attorney and Steins agreed to answer questions would there actually be an interview. So therefore, it's likely he probably wouldn't, because very few attorneys would ever want you, under that circumstance, would want you to talk to the police. If I was a defense attorney and I was called to that courthouse, I would advise Steins, do not talk to the police at this time. Maybe in the future, but not at this point. What shocked me was that from Stamper's, Detective Stamper's testimony, it didn't even seem like an attempt was made to interview him, like even request an interview. So that's a little murky, but you might be right. It was that there was actually someone there that he asked to be his attorney or something like that. But that wasn't mentioned that way. It wasn't clear. But yeah, if a suspect who's in custody requests an attorney at any time, there can be no questioning whatsoever until that attorney arrives and discusses with that client what they want to do. If after the attorney discusses the situation with the client, the defendant still says, I don't want to speak to you, that's it. If they, for some reason, the attorney says, we'll speak to you now, that's a different story. But 99% of the time, the defense attorney will just shut down the investigation, and there will be absolutely no discussion of the events with the defendant. There will not be an official interview.
Absolutely. Melissa from the chat, can I ask, why did the judge have his daughter's number on his cell phone? And you're referring to the sheriff's daughter. And we addressed that earlier on, and we don't know specifically. All we know is rumor that potentially the judge may have been helping the wife and the family of the sheriff, because the wife, and this is not confirmed, was potentially going through a divorce. Is there a possibility that some fugazi activity was going on between the judge and the sheriff's daughter? That's what people want to believe. There is no facts to that. How we will find that out, and we spoke about it before, are the phones. If there's been calls, we'll know, and text messages between the judge and the sheriff's daughter, we will find that out in good order, and we'll know the answer to that. The other, again, rumor, because we don't know it to be a fact, is that potentially the judge was helping the wife of the sheriff in a divorce. But then out of the sheriff's mouth, he said to the investigators, the judge was trying to kidnap my family. So what that means, again, remains to be seen. We don't know what he meant by that. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, you're in the right place. And if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button right on the screen. And if you want to contribute to us financially, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels. We also have a YouTube channel membership with 5 different levels. And we appreciate all of our friends, our family, and our Police Off the Cuff subscribers that keep this channel going and growing like it is now. And we appreciate all new subscribers. I see a lot of new names, and make sure you hit that subscribe button. Mike, I'm going to go back to the courtroom right now, and we'll listen to this investigator.
The other officers you mentioned, when you secured the scene, that you secured those phones as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
And have you reviewed both of those phones?
They're currently at the forensic lab at this time being downloaded. I have had discussions with the people at the lab regarding the downloads.
Based upon your conversations with the officers, are you aware of any recent content that was up and could have been relevant at the time of their discussion?
I was told that Sheriff Steins had tried to call his daughter, and he had tried to call his daughter from the judge's phone also.
Have officers confirmed that the sheriff's daughter's phone number was on Judge Mullin's phone?
Yes, I believe so, yes.
So that number had been called from Judge Mullin's phone?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
He answered that so painfully, like he didn't want to let that out. He didn't want to let that. Yes, her number was on the judge's phone. Someone also put in the chat that Byington, I saw where the judge was mentoring the sheriff's daughter. Good grief, what a mess. It potentially could be. You're right. But we don't have the facts yet. So we can't say, oh, it's a mess, because we don't have any facts. But that's the scary part of this is absolutely that we do not have the facts to this case. We do not have the cell phones back. And this investigator is really almost answering these questions under duress. I just don't understand why it's so difficult for him to answer these questions.
To some of that raw emotion right now so you can fully get a grasp of that moment when they saw that video.
Is that a portion of the video? Yes. Back over here.
So Vinny, you could really hear it right there, just that raw sadness. That
was the courtroom and the families of the judge. You could hear them wailing, crying as they watched the shooting, which is, again, we'll replay it, but it is tough to watch a live shooting of someone being murdered.
bunch of people speckled on his side. There's more people on Judge Mullin's side, less people on the sheriff's side, but I did see two teenage girls sitting over there that did resemble his daughters, and they kind of sat there stoic, as did the sheriff when the video played. He didn't really have any emotion. He kind of just looked at it. He didn't look away. He just accepted it for what it was, and his family didn't hear any cries from that side of the courtroom, but I did see them holding each other, just kind of, again, accepting what was being shown to the court, as gruesome as it was.
What a moment. I can't imagine being that family. You're watching your loved one being executed, defenseless, cowering in the corner, trying to get some protection, trying to just get away, and unsuccessfully, obviously. Okay, let's get into some more of what we learned today. How about the sheriff? I know he knows he has the right to remain silent. He's learned that many, many, many years ago.
So again, this goes back to the sheriff. He's not going to give a statement. He's law enforcement. He knows he's not going to talk. I mean, the old adage, a picture's worth 1,000 words. I mean, they don't need his statement. They have video of him shooting to death this judge. Emily Parkinson, thank you for gifting 1 police off the cuff membership. Very much appreciated. Carol Grayston gifted 5 police off the cuff memberships. Thank you so much. Very much appreciated. And also, so do the people that are awarded these memberships. They really appreciate that. They've become part of the police off the cuff family. So, Mike, let's talk about that. He's not going to make a statement, but yet they have video of him shooting the judge. Now who did this is not a question. Why he did it, which is not a necessary element of the charge, but we don't know that yet, Mike.
Yeah, Billy, it's so clear what happened. It's very brief and it's brutal. It's very clear on the tape that there was no extenuating circumstances being shown where the judge may have done something and the sheriff was reacting like a physical altercation. Nothing like that whatsoever. So it looks very cold-blooded. And at the preliminary hearing, all the state has to do is prove that they have probable cause to arrest the sheriff for murder. And that is easily provided for only with just the videotape, that it speaks for itself. As you say, picture's worth 1,000 words. Do you want me to talk a little bit about the murder statute at all, or?
We're going to get to that. I
Okay.
just want to introduce this sort of, elephant in the room thing.
Yeah.
And what it is this individual named Ben Fields, who was he was a bailiff, and technically he was under the charge of Sheriff Steins, and he was arrested, I think, over 3 years ago. But apparently the civil suit is hitting now, and basically what it was about was that it should be considered rape or sodomy, that he was having relations with jailed female prisoners that couldn't afford to pay for the ankle monitor to be released into their own, released on your own reconnaissance.
Right.
So he used that power against them and somehow got them released under conditions that they would meet with him. And he communicated with these victims, and he is now in prison for these charges. However, the sheriff is in a civil suit, is also being sued for the actions of his employee. You want to speak upon that?
Yeah, it's called the doctrine of respondeat superior. Whenever a person, we used to see this in the NYPD, they want to sue a police officer for shooting somebody, unlawful arrest, whatever the allegation is, they will sue the police officer, and they will also name the police department and the police commissioner as co-defendants. And they do that all the time because you don't want to just sue the officer because the officer doesn't have a lot of money. You want to sue the police department and the commissioner also, because the department has the money, the city pays the police department. That's where the true bag of money is. But so therefore, under the doctrine of respondeat superior, you sue just the person, the actor who you allege harmed you civilly, but you also sue their institution and their chain of command. In this case, you also sue their institution, the sheriff's department, and the sheriff himself or herself. And you name, because they were acting as sheriff at that time. And the allegation isn't the same thing as the allegation against the deputy, the low-level person that is, sexual abuse, whatever happens to be, or something like that. But the sheriff in this case was sued because they are the person in charge of training, maintaining security, and they have to supervise this person. So the allegation is that the sheriff here, Steins, was actually negligent in his duty to properly train and properly supervise all of the deputies under his command. So nobody's saying he did anything personal to hurt anyone, just that he was negligent. And the person is alleging that so they could say that if not for this negligence on the part of the sheriff's department and the sheriff themselves, that person who actually harmed them would never have done that. So that's where the money is. You go for the big fish. So nobody's saying what Steins did, that he personally took part in any way and gratuitously did anything to hurt anybody, just that he just happened to be the sheriff who was in charge of the sheriff's department at that time. But still, that is a heavy burden to bear because he has to be deposed. He has to get the county involved. They have to depose him. Opposing counsel is going to depose him. This stuff can drag on. And so that's probably very stressful for anybody and who's going to be sued. So
Well, this
that
civil
was,
suit
yeah.
just came down, and this is the first
Right.
page of it, and you could
Mhm.
see Eastern District of Kentucky, the plaintiffs, the victim, Sabrina Atkins, the plaintiffs, Ben Fields individually and in his official capacity as a deputy sheriff with the Letcher County Sheriff's Office, and unknown supervisors, and Mickey Steins, Letcher County Sheriff,
Right.
as he's on the complaint as a defendant. These crimes occurred in the judge's office.
Yes. Mhm.
So this is a civil action for damages for violation of the constitutional rights of plaintiff by the defendants acting under the color of state law. In addition, the plaintiff alleges that defendant Ben Fields is liable under state law. Plaintiff asserts that the defendant Fields, in his individual and official capacities, violated the plaintiff's rights secured by the 4th and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution, as well as sections 1, 2, and 10 of the Kentucky Constitution, by subjecting plaintiff to arbitrary action, unreasonable search and seizure, and deprivation of liberty. The plaintiff also alleges that defendant Fields is liable under state law for damages for false imprisonment, assault and battery, malicious prosecution, intentional infliction of emotional distress, negligence, and gross negligence. Defendant Fields' unknown supervisors and defendant Letcher County Sheriff is alleged to be liable to plaintiff for deliberate indifference in failing to adequately train and supervise defendant Fields. So I'm not going to read this whole thing, but this is the civil suit, which the sheriff is also named party to. So was he, or could he have been, was this what he was so upset about, or is it much more personal? It seems to me that this would be a much more personal thing, and I couldn't see him doing what he did to the judge for these civil charges. Your thoughts?
Billy, I agree. If you're a police commissioner, you're a county sheriff or something like that, you are going to get these lawsuits from time to time. That comes with the territory. You just happen to be the person who's in charge at the time that someone is suing a police officer or a sheriff's deputy or a constable or something like that. You will always get named as under the doctrine of respondeat superior, and 99.9999% of the time, once the sheriff or the police commissioner is interviewed by the attorneys for the county and the police department, they will be indemnified, which means that they will get free legal counsel and they will be indemnified from any monetary damages so long as the county and the police department believe that the sheriff acted properly, not about what the other person did, but lower down, but did the sheriff themselves act properly? If the answer is yes, they don't have to worry about paying a civil judgment or anything like that. So therefore, I would imagine, and this is the depositions we're starting, and the sheriff may have been very troubled by it because he may not understand fully what the future was going to be, and he may not have ever had a lawsuit against him. He may not know all the little intricacies, but almost in all cases, that sheriff is going to be represented by legal counsel for free by the county and the police department and be indemnified from any sort of judgments by the county and the police department, so long as he was doing his job in a reasonable manner.
Mike, these are the attorneys for Sheriff Steins. I want to play this. This is from Crime Fix.
The phone number or any interaction, other than it appears that our client made the statement that he was concerned about the safety of his wife and daughter.
Do we know, either Carrie or Jeremy, why Sheriff Steins decided to use Judge Mullin's phone instead of his own? We know you said that he did use his phone and then use the judge's phone.
Yeah, that is another reason why the phones are going to be so important in this case. And until we have back the forensic review of the phones, all of the phones, and in fact, I think we learned that there was another phone that was seized or maybe turned over from an employee of the sheriff's that we were not aware of before we were going into the hearing yesterday. All of those phones are going to become critical. And at this point, we just don't know.
The Bartleys say they're investigating everything, including whether the civil suit involving former Deputy Fields played a role.
We have to ask the question, since the allegations involve the same chambers, the same location that this incident took place in. And, I'm still struck by how unusual it is that you have a live recording of a judge's chambers going on. Most of the time, if you have cameras in a judge's chambers, they are only on if you're having a hearing. And at that point, they're initiated by a court staff, and then they are turned off by a court staff, and they include audio. But I don't know of another judge that would have had a video camera recording him 24/7 or 9 to 5, however long he's in the office. Now, we've had some information that these cameras were put up after the lawsuit and after the conviction of a deputy for some sexual crimes that he committed in the judge's chambers, these same chambers. So again, we're asking the questions too. And so far, no one will give us the answers.
There are a lot of rumors floating around that small town, and one of them has to do with Sheriff Steins' daughter. And we know that she was interviewed by law enforcement in the presence of her mother. Do we know, is there any indication that there's some investigation going on related to that? Kentucky State Police have kind of said they are looking into kind of everything and whether or not there may have been something going on that was untoward with his daughter. Are you aware of anything?
We await the results of the investigation ourselves. I don't know anything more than we heard yesterday at the hearing in terms of what that evidence may look like. We don't know. I mean, we're not at this point. We're not making that allegation at all. We are trying to understand why our client felt that he had to protect his wife and daughter, as he told the officers that day. And, that could be one, that could be based upon one factor. It could be multiple factors. And again, at this point, we're trying to, we don't want to speculate. I'm not going to speculate about anything just because there are these salacious rumors. I'm not going to get into that or speculate about that. Because for us, the examination is, did our client believe at that time that he either acted in self-protection or that he was so emotionally overcome that he was unable to control his actions in that point? It's based upon his subjective belief. What ultimately is objectively true may be important to know, but the focus will be on what our client believed at the time he had to do.
Despite Sheriff Steins being charged with murder, the most serious offense a person can face in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, the Bartleys say Steins is receiving a lot of support.
Sheriff Steins has, you would not believe the outpouring of expressions of support for Sheriff Steins. Again, ultimately, no one is going to ever say, we're never going to say that, that this is a beneficial thing or a positive thing that a man was killed. It's a tragic thing, no matter how we look at it. And just because we represent the sheriff, anytime there's a loss of life, that's tragic. But no one is supporting him from the community and saying, well, we love that this happened. But what I am amazed by are the stories of Sheriff Steins transporting juveniles and stopping at the McDonald's drive-thru to get them food and to take care of people who were having difficulties in getting food and taking it to their house. I've heard from drug addicts and recovering addicts who attribute their sobriety and their success in life to Sheriff Stein's efforts. Now,
You know, Mike, that's all well and good, and I'm sure the sheriff was a fine man. But
Right.
you know, it's the old adage. You know, you could do a million things, million good things, and you do one big thing, and your life's over. You know, and one of the things I thought we were going to address here, but we haven't, and that's of course his defense attorneys think they're going to be able to get a manslaughter charge out of this and not get a murder first degree charge. They believe that, and I think the language is, he was under extreme emotional disturbance and believing that his wife and his daughter were endangered. And that was his mental state of mind, extreme emotional disturbance.
Right.
And that is one of the subdivisions within the statute of manslaughter. You want to speak upon that since you do have a law degree?
Okay, and I did my research. All right, Kentucky does have murder and manslaughter, like every other state, and they do have the death penalty for certain offenses. So murder of like a special person under special circumstances would be capital punishment, like shooting a police officer, a correctional officer, a torturous death, a multiple, like a serial killer, or you shoot someone who's really elderly, or you shoot a juvenile, that would be capital punishment murder first degree. And that would also include shooting a judge, or a witness in a trial, or the district attorney, things like that. That would be murder first degree. That would be a death penalty case. Murder two is what you'd call just every other murder except that would just be murdering anyone who's not of a protected class, intentionally causing their death. That'd be murder two. That's what he's being charged with right now. And that's probably what he would go to trial on. However, as you said, the defense attorney is very confident that they could show that there was some extreme emotional duress that overwhelmed the person's defenses and caused them to shoot, and in this case, kill the judge. Now, under Kentucky law, that would be manslaughter. And under Kentucky law, it says a person is not guilty of murder if they acted under the influence of extreme emotional duress from which there was a reasonable explanation. The reasonableness of that explanation that the sheriff would have to offer would have to be from the jury would have to view that reasonableness from the sheriff's own footsteps, putting themselves in the footsteps, the shoes of the sheriff, and seeing what he saw, believing what he believed, taking action when he took it. Would that be reasonable under the circumstances? Would that allegation that, hey, I am suffering from extreme emotional duress, be reasonable to the jury looking at it from Stein's particular viewpoint? That's who will ultimately determine whether or not Stein's acted under extreme emotional duress. If they believe that he acted reasonably under extreme emotional duress, they could find him guilty of manslaughter, a first degree, which would be a 10-year sentence rather than a life sentence. So it appears that the defense attorneys are very glib. They are really opening up in this case, which I'm surprised. But they really believe that there will be a showing of something on those phones that would give the jury the ability to see the situation from the sheriff's shoes and looking at the situation through the sheriff's eyes, making the sheriff's actions to seem reasonable enough. It's up to the jury to make that ultimate decision. They may see these things that the defense attorney wants them to see and ultimately say, we don't really believe that would be enough to take that extreme action and they could still find him guilty of murder. So it's all going to be up to the jury. But I think in this case, Sheriff Steins is going to have to testify. I don't think there's any way he could ever convince the jury of the reasonableness of his extreme emotional duress unless he actually got up there and narrated to the jury at trial what he was going through. It's going to be very interesting if it comes to trial.
This is from WKYT TV, Kentucky.
Surveillance video played of a deadly shooting in a judge's chambers. Prosecutor Jackie Steele simply asked the detective who the people were in the video.
That was Sheriff Mickey Steins and Judge Kevin Mullins.
And also, who had the firearm?
Sheriff Steins.
That was the basis of the questioning from the Commonwealth. But Steins' attorney questioned about the witnesses who saw or knew about the shooting. The detective said those interviews were done by others and are still being processed. They're also reviewing the content of phones owned by Steins and Mullins.
I was told that Sheriff Steins had tried to call his daughter, and he had tried to call his daughter from the judge's phone also.
The detective confirmed that Steins' daughter's number was also on the judge's phone. Detective Stamper also talked of Steins' demeanor after the shooting.
Mostly calm, I thought. I mean, I talked to him, but he didn't say nothing about why this had happened.
Now, the next phase of this will be a grand jury possibly considering an indictment, and that's after probable cause was found. Probable cause does not mean guilt, and a grand jury will likely consider this case over the next couple of weeks. In Morgan County.
So one of the things that people are asking in the chat, of course, they will need a search warrant to take the daughter's phone. They need to get the daughter's phone as soon as possible. I would assume, and we know that means make an ass of you and me, that they've already taken the daughter's phone. And if they haven't, that's not sound investigation. But I would imagine they've already invoiced her phone and they're forensically going through it. And why? Is there interactions between her and the judge? Obviously, he had her phone number in his phone. And
Right.
What is the nature of their relationship? There was also some reports that the judge was sort of teaching her about, the field of law or mentoring her. And we don't know, did it go further than that? Was there a relationship? Did that relationship grow into something other than him mentoring her? Mike?
Yeah, there's trouble there. There's something rotten in Denmark, as they say, behind the scenes. Something is going on that is that burst like a volcano that afternoon. Something happened that may not have been present 6 months before, 6 weeks before, a week before, but something erupted all at once. And so that seems obvious. What I would hope that that detective did, was get a search warrant for the daughter's phone, but also get a search warrant for the sheriff's wife's phone, because he did mention that he was worried about someone taking away his wife and his child. So he specifically mentioned the wife. I'd want to see what was on her cell phone too. We do know that some civilian employee of the sheriff's department was interviewed by by Stamper and his colleagues at the state police during the investigation, and voluntarily turned over their phone. So at least one of the people who were in the courthouse actually said, "Look, here, I want to give you my phone." Actually didn't even ask for a search warrant or anything. They said, "Here, take a look at my phone." And they downloaded, I'm sure they downloaded that phone too. So, in today's world, that's what you're looking for. Everybody lives their lives completely on their phones and sends messages 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And whatever happened, the answer to why is probably contained on someone's phones or a number of people's phones in that situation.
I find what Byington just wrote in the chat somewhat humorous, and I'll tell you why. If there was something on Judge's phone, why did he let the sheriff look at it? Well, because he had a gun in his hand and
Yeah.
said, let me see your phone. You know, there's an old expression in New York City. What do you call a man with a gun? Sir.
Right. That's
So,
right.
you know, the guy has a gun in his hand. He says, "Let me see your phone." What is he supposed to? He's going to challenge that? No, I don't think he's going to. He's going to say, "No, you're not allowed to see it. It's my phone. It's private." He's pointing a gun at him, and you know you're going to do whatever the guy asks you to do. This is the defense team for the sheriff here. On the
Oregon District Court's now in session with the Honorable Ruber.
Okay. And I mean, I'm just asking, so this video didn't have an audio recording to it, correct?
No audio.
Outside of once the 4 people that were inside that we don't know their names, once
This is the same investigator, Clayton Stamper, and it's just I don't know, something's not right in the way he testifies.
these 4 people had left the chambers, were they in an area adjacent where they could hear anything that was going on?
Yes, I believe some of them did remain in the next room.
Okay. And what did they tell us?
Do I?
What did they hear?
I've not been part. I wasn't part of those interviews.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, you're prepared for a preliminary hearing on a murder, and there are witnesses in an adjacent room.
I mean, they heard
Now,
gunshots.
please, my question, please.
Yeah, please ask the questions.
Thank you, officer. So you are investigating a murder and testifying in a preliminary hearing, and there are witnesses who may have overheard what preceded this edited clip. Yet you can't tell us today anything that they said?
I've not personally listened to those interviews. I've talked to the other officers that did those interviews.
Fair enough. And I mean, we're here at a preliminary hearing, as you know, that you can testify to hearsay. I'm asking you what they said.
They heard gunshots.
Okay. Was there any statements that we overheard?
No.
Were there raised voices?
There, one person stated that she didn't recognize him as being Judge Mullin's voice, but heard somebody say, "Help, help."
Presumably that would be after the firearm was drawn or shot.
You know, someone from the chat, Brooklyn Pasola, under what circumstances would the cops not go into an interview room and get a statement from him? They waited for him to lawyer up. So unusual. Brooklyn Pasola, I think the police would ask, we'd like to take a statement. And anyone that's in law enforcement would have said, I have an attorney. I'm not willing to make a statement. Anyone in law enforcement would say that. And if you don't, you're a fool. So the sheriff knows to say that, and the officers, the detectives, the investigators are going to know once he says, no, I have an attorney. That's it. It's over. He's not going to make a statement. And you could consider that bias, or they're not questioning a fellow officer. As I said, anyone in law enforcement that gets in a situation where they're going to need legal counsel will not make a statement to investigators. That's just the way it is.
Objection, Your Honor.
I would draw, Judge. So is there any testimony that you can give us today about any statements or arguments or the content of that argument prior to the shooting?
No.
I want to ask generally, so did you process the scene? Are you the lead investigator on this case?
I am.
Okay, so as a lead investigator, I would presume that you would have secured the chambers and evidence once you arrived.
I was part of that, yes.
You were part of it, right? But you're the lead investigator, so you'd be in charge of those duties and delegating what should be done. Is that fair?
No, I don't delegate what's done.
Okay, so you're the lead investigator. What does that mean?
I'm the case officer.
Okay, so you're carrying the case. So I want to make sure I understand, had Judge Mullin's been removed from chambers when you arrived?
No.
Were you able to ascertain, did he have a firearm on his person?
We did not locate one.
You did not locate one?
No, there's not one in the chambers.
Okay. And there was none on his person?
No.
Okay. All right. Who was the first person to arrive on behalf of law enforcement to investigate?
They were already in the courthouse.
Fair enough, but I'm talking about in terms of people that we may see a report from, or
Mike, not for nothing. This investigator is about as sharp as a marble, and I cannot believe that. First of all, it sounds like he's never testified before. He's not anticipating questions. He doesn't know the answers to questions. He's acting like it's the first time he ever heard something like this. I find it off-putting, to say the least, that it almost sounds like the people aren't ready to even do a preliminary hearing. And he just doesn't sound like a pro to me. I hate to criticize another law enforcement officer, but he doesn't sound like he knows what he's doing.
Billy, it is very, very concerning to me because it, this shooting occurred 2 weeks before this preliminary hearing the other day. And in 2 weeks, I can't imagine anyone who's the lead investigator not gathering up all the reports, reading them all several times over, taking notes about what each person said, interviewing them both individually and as a team to find out what actually happened, what is going on, what does each person have to contribute to his own file. That seems not to be the case, that he is very laid back. The idea of a lead investigator, I thought, would be someone who's going to be a type A personality, get this done, be thorough. I would imagine I would have thought he would have had a file with him. I'm shocked as you are. I'm very shocked. Yeah.
Country Bumpkins from the chat. The sheriff did not invoke his right. The attorney specifically asked the detective this at this hearing, and he answers no, and no to trying to interview the sheriff. That's, right. Why would you not try? I mean, you at least would be expected to. Yes, we asked him, we'd like to interview you, and he said no, and invoke counsel. But to say you didn't even try to interview him, that's not acceptable. That is not. That sounds like the fix is in. It just does not make any sense to me at all.
Take part in this investigation. Who would be the first person?
I believe Trooper Jason Bates was the first KSP personnel on scene.
Okay. And you spoke with him, and
I did.
And he searched and did not locate a firearm?
No, he didn't search the scene. No.
His
role at that point was security of the scene.
I understand, but I'm just trying to ascertain. You said earlier that there was no firearm found.
No.
I'm wanting to know, can you tell us, was it specifically searched for a firearm?
In the judge's chambers?
Yes, sir.
There was myself, Detective Chris Collins, Detective Scott Caldwell, Detective Eric Caldwell. That's all I recall right now.
Okay, but I'm trying to understand. So who searched specifically for a firearm?
We all did.
And that was specifically something you looked for?
Yes.
Fair enough. Okay.
It's like they got to pull it out of them,
Yeah.
Of course, your investigation, did you ascertain that prior in the day
folks, just one thing. I'm just going to use a little of my expertise here. The first duty of a responding homicide investigator is the protection of life. So the very first thing you do is to ascertain, is the judge alive or is he dead? That is the number one thing, because if he is alive, then you do everything possible to make sure he stays alive and get him out of there to a hospital. If he's dead, you secure the crime scene. Searching the scene in an office that appears to be that small, you don't need 4 detectives stepping over each other and stepping on each other and potentially stepping on spent shells. They're all over the floor to search that room. You don't need 4 guys to do that. The lead detective absolutely should be the lead searcher in this. Look, in New York City, we have a unit called the crime scene unit. Now, we would, as the responding detective, search the scene, but they would also do a search because they would ask us, what did we find? What did you find the firearm on the location? Because the judge apparently is known to carry a firearm, but they didn't, and he almost didn't even want to answer. He was unclear. And in this room that's this small, how do 4 guys do a search? That's my question. And again, this is a preliminary hearing, not a trial. But this is like a dress rehearsal, and it's a bad dress rehearsal.
In a lunch meeting between Sheriff Steins and Judge Mullins.
There was.
Pardon?
There was.
Okay. Sorry, I couldn't hear your response. I wasn't being trite. So where did this take place?
It's a restaurant called Street Side. And it's just down the street from the courthouse.
Okay. And it's my understanding there were a couple of other people who attended the luncheon.
There were several, yes.
Okay. And at some point after that, they wrapped up lunch and left, obviously, and went back to the courthouse. Are you aware of anything so far in your investigation that would tell us there was any issues at lunch between Judge Mullins and Sheriff Steins?
No.
Okay. Had someone on behalf of the KSB has spoken to those witnesses?
Yes, they've all been interviewed.
And there was nothing unusual that had arisen during that luncheon?
I was told that the judge made a statement to Mickey about, do we need to meet private in my chambers? That's all I was told.
Do you know the context of what the conversation was before that they would need to discuss in chambers?
I do not.
So it's my understanding that in the larger portion of the video that we haven't had access to, that there is a point when Sheriff Steins asked for to see the telephone of Judge Mullins.
Yes.
Is that a yes? I mean,
yes.
Yes. Okay. And I would presume that you and the other officers you mentioned when you secured the scene, that you secured those phones as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
And have you reviewed both of those phones?
They're currently at the forensic lab at this time being downloaded. I have had discussions with the people at the lab regarding the downloads.
And those are a couple of other questions that I was going to ask you, but my original question was, have you reviewed or are you aware of the content of the phones?
I've not personally seen it because I've not received those reports yet.
Okay. Again, based upon your conversation with the officers, are you aware of any recent content that was up and could have been relevant at the time of their discussion?
I was told that Sheriff Steins had tried to call his daughter, and he had tried to call his daughter from the judge's phone also.
So have you obtained the phone records from Judge Mullins' phone?
I don't have those in my possession yet. No.
Okay. Have you issued a search warrant for them?
Yes.
Okay. And have officers confirmed that the sheriff's daughter's phone number was on Judge Mullins' phone?
Yes.
Okay.
So, yes.
So that number had been called from Judge Mullins' phone. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
This is like pulling teeth from this guy.
So we don't have a viewing of what transpired during that exchange of phones. But based upon your review of those moments prior to, when Sheriff Steins observes that cell phone, was he previously seated?
Yes.
Okay, so in the clip we saw, he was standing the entire time.
He was seated in front of the judge's desk.
and he looks at the cell phone. What is it? Can you describe his reaction in the video that we haven't seen?
Whose reaction?
Well, the sheriff.
You can't see his face in the video.
Okay. But is it clear that, does it appear to you that, let me rephrase this. Did he stand up after
Yes.
looking at the phone?
He stood up.
And how long after he looked at the cell phone and stood up did this occur that you played?
Just seconds.
Did you make the decision as on edits today for what you were going to present? In terms of, did you make the edit or determine which portion of the video we were going to see today?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay. Both cell phones have been sent to the Kentucky State Police forensic team. Is that correct?
Yes.
Have you gotten any early report on what was found?
No.
Were both phones still on the desk when you arrived?
The judge's phone was on the desk. Sheriff Stein's phone was on his person.
Okay, so are there photographs of, was the phone locked at that point or was it still open?
With both of you asking about both of them, or?
Well, first let's talk about, that's fair. First, I'm talking about Judge Mullin's, since it was the one that was still on the desk and presumably nobody touched it prior to you securing it, correct?
No.
So, yeah, so I would like to know about that. Have you ascertained what was currently open on that cell phone?
No, I don't know at this point.
You don't know?
No.
Okay, do you think that will be important to learn?
I hope to learn that when the report's ready, yes.
Okay. But as of today, you can't tell us what was currently open on the judge's file?
No, sir.
It seems to me that.
Did you conduct an interview with Sheriff Stein's daughter?
I did not, but she has been interviewed.
Are you aware of any, who was present?
From the chat, Country Bumpkins, I'm a local to this. I fear that if the FBI does not investigate this, the full truth will never come out. Wow. Small town justice, but we'll see.
She was interviewed.
Lieutenant Randy Combs and Detective Anthony Trotter.
Okay. And she was interviewed with or without her parent?
With.
So her parent was present at the time you interviewed her?
Yes, I believe. I wasn't there, but yes, I think so.
And law enforcement has not spoken to her without her parent present?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Did the Kentucky State Police obtain her phone?
No.
Wow. Wait. That's like a blockbuster. Did he just say that the state police did not obtain her phone? Is that what I just heard?
I think he did say that.
Let me play it back here.
Okay. And she was interviewed with or without her parent?
With.
So her parent was present at the time you interviewed her?
Yes, I believe. I wasn't there, but yes, I think so.
And law enforcement has not spoken to her without her parent present?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Did the Kentucky State Police obtain her phone?
No.
That is unbelievable. That is like investigation 101. Are you kidding me? You didn't take her phone? And I think that the defense attorney also must be saying, well, good. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like, how could they not take her phone? I mean, and Mike, as you said also, and the wife's phone.
Right.
People in the chat are saying, and we spoke about this earlier on, that the sheriff is saying that the judge was going to kidnap his wife and his daughter. We know that. We put that out there early on in the show. But for them to have not taken the daughter and the wife's phone is just, it's not believable to me.
You
Yeah,
intend
it's very
to
disturbing.
obtain records for her cell phone number?
Possibly, yes.
Possibly. Are you
Do you
kidding
believe
me?
that that will be soon that you'll do that?
Could be, yes.
Had you already intended to do that, or
This guy sounds like he's a square badge at Costco. I cannot believe this guy's a detective. It's just, yeah, I think we will. I think we'll do that.
Yeah.
did you just respond to my question?
Well, the call should be on the judge's records too.
Well, I understand.
And
that.
she's made statements about what occurred during those conversations.
I understand that, but I would presume have you ascertained whether Judge Mullins also had apps that stand outside of phone records?
I've not received those records yet. I don't know what's on the phone.
Fair enough, but I mean, did you look at the phone? Did it appear there were apps on it?
I'm not the person that's qualified to look through the phone.
Okay, but you're familiar with cell phones. They can host other forms of communication.
Hold on.
Yes, sir.
What's the
He's been
objection?
asked and answered, Your Honor. He's asked a question, I think about 4 or 5 different ways. The officers, the detective repeatedly said he does not have a report with phones. He's not good at the phone. He can't testify that matter.
I just
Let
want
him
to,
ask the question, and what he can only testify what he has personal knowledge about.
absolutely, yes, sir. Thank you, Your Honor. So you're aware that phones can be used for apps such as Facebook?
Yes,
Okay. And that is not something that is captured by cell phone records. You would agree with me?
I agree.
So in light of that, although the records may be mutually the same, right, the same between Judge Mullins' phone and the sheriff's daughter, do you believe that you could also ascertain other information from the cell phone app content?
Are you asking what apps are on the phone?
Yes. Well, that was my original question.
I
but
don't know
thought you didn't know.
I've not received that report yet. I don't know what apps he had downloaded on the phone.
If he has social media apps, do you intend to?
That could lead to additional search warrants, yes.
If you would, officer, please let me finish before you move forward, and I'll try to slow down a little bit as well, okay?
Sure.
Thank you, Trooper. Have you determined whether there were any previous issues, personal or professional, between Sheriff Steins and Judge Mullins?
I've heard things.
Okay, what have you heard?
Just that this regarding the lawsuit that the Letcher County Sheriff's Office is currently involved with.
The lawsuit that involved ultimately a criminal conviction of a deputy for sexual behavior in the judge's chambers. Is that the one you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay, and the subject matter of that lawsuit, the chambers area, that's the same chambers in which this occurred. Is that correct?
I'm not familiar with the details of that case.
Pat Brooks from the chat, thank you so much for the 1999 super sticker. I love and appreciate you, Sergeant Bill and Professor Mike. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. That's very much appreciated. I'm not feeling very confident with this guy's testimony. I'm just shaking my head a lot. I'm not liking it.
That the lawsuit resulted from.
Okay. Are you aware of any criminal reports that Sheriff Steins had made of Judge Mullins prior to this day?
No.
Did you personally observe Sheriff Steins following this video?
Did I personally observe him? What?
Did you meet with him? Did you talk to him after?
He was in custody when I arrived at the courthouse that afternoon.
And at some point, did you draw any observation about his demeanor?
He was mostly calm, I thought. I mean, I talked to him, but he didn't say nothing about why this had happened. But he was calm. He was kind of afraid that
Basically, all I said was, treat me fair. That's basically the comments he made.
Okay. Did he also make a statement about, I don't see it in the citation here, but somewhere along the line I saw a statement being attributed to him about protecting his family?
I wasn't present, but when he was taken into custody, I was told by one of the other officers that were there that he made the comment, they're trying to kidnap my wife and kid.
Now, Mike, one of the things that, I've seen in the chat and I question also is that, was this an extreme emotional disturbance thought that he was having? Or is there, in fact, any truth to this whatsoever? And is he equating perhaps his wife maybe going to leave him or filing for divorce, and the judge may be being her advisor or confidant, and he put that together as the judge was involved in kidnapping his family? Could that be something like that?
Billy, that may be the basis of his, extreme emotional duress defense, the foundation for it, the prerequisite, the prerequisite event upon which he decided to take action, that he would be overwhelmed by this thought. But, if that's it, if that's what he has, I don't think that's going to go anywhere with a decent jury, but he used the term kidnap. People might use terms, not figuratively, not literally, but I hope it's interesting that the defense attorney got the investigator to admit to that he did say that. So that's good. So that's on the record already, so that no one could ever say, no, that's been misheard or anything like that. No. So the defense attorney did a good job with it, with the preliminary hearing and the questioning of Stomper. But if Steins is going to hope to get a manslaughter conviction rather than a murder conviction, I think he better have something more than that, because many people have divorces and child custody issues and all kinds of things like that. And people don't shoot each other for that or anything else. I imagine, though, that is probably the sole basis of why he may have gone overboard and felt that he was overwhelmed. Whether or not that's going to be a valid defense, I don't know, but that's the defense he might interpose.
Mel Stiller, in my opinion, the sheriff was made aware of the terrible goings on in that judge's chambers, so he did what he thought he had to be done. Mm-hmm. He planned to do away with the enabler. Mel, the guy who was arrested, Deputy Fields, right, that happened over 3 years ago. And just recently, the civil case has dropped. And after that occurred, the judge had a video camera put into his chambers. So I'm not thinking that that's why he did this. I can see the sheriff being extremely upset to have his name named as defendant number 2 in that civil lawsuit. I could see him being upset with that, but mm-hmm. I don't see that things would have continued in the judge's chambers after everyone was made aware what was going on. Mike, your thoughts with that?
Yeah, you're right. There's never been, as far as we know so far, any allegation that the judge had any inkling what was going on after hours in his chambers, and therefore there was no thought to put a camera in. And after this event occurred, a camera was put in. It's been there for several years now. Everybody knows it's there. But yeah, I don't think that other than, there's got to be something more. There's got to be something more, I think, for that defense attorney to feel very confident in giving those interviews like he did, that we saw earlier. But it could be very distressing to that, to to the sheriff, because he has told everyone in the past that he was going to retire at the end of his term in office, and he was going to try again for like another 4 or 6 year term or whatever it is in that part of the state. So he was planning on retiring anyway, but maybe he felt personally offended that he would be named in a lawsuit, even if it was just as respondeat superior, the person who happened to be the sheriff, and that he was negligent. That stigma may have really bothered him. In New York City, we're so used to this sort of thing. In many other big cities, you get many lawsuits, but in this part of this, state with a small town, small county, he may not have felt that way. He may have actually been very, very disturbed by having to do a deposition and perhaps been accused of being negligent in the discharge of his duties. We don't know.
Right. Go back to the courtroom here.
Was pre-planned?
No.
Okay.
Not at this time.
And would you agree that from what we've seen so far, from the evidence you've seen so far, the shooting was a reaction to what was on that cell phone in that moment? Is that accurate?
Objection, Your Honor. Also speculation outside of his scope of expertise.
Your Honor, I believe that if he has formed an opinion about the investigation up to this point, especially at a preliminary hearing, he could speculate on that, Judge.
Well, she's saying.
Sure. So, is there anything other than the content of the phone that this video will reveal to us about why this took place?
No.
Does it appear that this took place as a reaction to what was happening in the chambers at that point?
I can say it occurred after a phone call was made. I don't know what was said or nothing like that, but
Fair enough. And I'm not asking you the content of any of that, but at this point, is it your theory that whatever that content was in the discussion was the impetus of the shooting?
it could be, but I don't know that for a fact.
Okay. Do you have any evidence up until this point that you have developed that would demonstrate that it was not as a reaction to what was on the phone?
No.
None whatsoever?
No.
Okay. Judge, if I have just one moment to confer with the counsel.
From the
Good
chat,
job. Good job.
KLW, I read a comment that stated the sheriff was abusing his wife and daughter, and they confided this to the judge in hopes the judge could help them get away from the defendant. Not sure if true. So it's really KLW, it's just speculation. There's a lot of speculation about a lot of different things. What we do know, the facts we do know, is that the Sheriff Stein, was tremendously upset by something that occurred. And it seemed that he was tremendously upset by seeing his daughter's phone number in the sheriff's phone. And that seems like is what precipitated the shooting. Your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, Billy, I was just, and this is like the third time I've seen the cross-examination by the defense attorney, and I like it. I think what the attorney did with the detective was excellent for his client. He got the detective to kind of say, it's possible that what happened at that phone, looking at that phone, that was the impetus of the shooting. He couldn't say for sure, but he said, possibly, maybe, perhaps, I'm not sure. And then the attorney went back at him and said, well, do you think that how do you phrase it? He said that it's possibly that it may have happened that way or may not have happened that way. And he said, oh, well, I'm not sure. So he kind of allowed the opened up the door. The sheriff, the investigator from the state police actually opened up the door and allowed for that possibility, and he got that witness to open up the door to that possibility that yes, indeed, at that moment, that phone and looking at that phone, that was the impetus for the shooting. That he couldn't say for sure, but you could not discount that as a theory. So I think in those kind of awkward, brief moments, I think the attorney did a great job for his client. I think he did an excellent job. And so I think the sheriff is being well represented in this case.
Absolutely. Let's go back to the
Then,
No.
did anyone from your agency attempt to interview him?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And at that point, had he asserted his right to an attorney or anything?
No.
That's disturbing.
Right.
That is very disturbing. And first of all, I mean, that's like, investigator 101. That looks like you're totally biased, that you didn't even try to interview him to find out what the truth was from his perspective. And the fact that they never even asked him, I find that horrific.
Bill, way better than me. When a person's first taken into custody and they're feeling very vulnerable and they're shocked, and he probably was in shock by what he had just done, they're probably more amenable to questioning than later on after they have a few hours to think about it or a day to think about it. The fact that he is admitted that he never once went to where the sheriff was, probably in a cell, locked up in a cell, to say, look, I'd like to speak to you about this. Would you like to speak? Would you like to talk to us about it? And then say, you have the right to remain silent. Bring him into an interrogation room. You would how you would do it. That is horrible. Why you wouldn't take that shot and try to interview him, and ask him? He may just give it all up spontaneously after you talk to him in 5 minutes. You don't know. But like you said before in the Soto case, you got to take that shot. I am shocked that he did not do that.
Let's get back to this. We'll finish this up here.
But nobody went back to try to talk to him or do an interview?
No.
Yeah. I think I have one other question. In addition to cell phones that we've discussed, the cell phone of Sheriff Steins and the cell phone that you found of Judge Mullins, were there additional phones that you were able to obtain?
There was one other phone that's currently being examined, and the basic reason it was seized was there was a text conversation between Sheriff Steins and some of his employees with the sheriff's office.
Okay, and that was an additional phone of Sheriff Steins?
It was a phone of, I guess she's the, I don't know what her title is, but she's employed. She's not sworn. She's employed by the Letcher County Sheriff's Office. And she voluntarily gave her phone to the person that interviewed her.
Okay, and just out of curiosity, could you explain why that was relevant or germane to your investigation?
I didn't conduct that interview, but it was, I guess it was regarding the dinner at Streetside and things that led up to the shooting. But I don't have those results either, so I don't know exactly what was said.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought when we discussed that earlier that you indicated there was no evidence that the conversations at the lunch.
I haven't seen those conversations yet. I've not received downloads from the phone.
Right, but I asked you if you're aware of any information that could have been gleaned from witnesses at that meeting. And as I recall, you said no, but there is some information that something was discussed at this lunch. Is that correct?
I don't know what was discussed at lunch.
I understand, but you obtained this lady that we don't know her name. You obtained her phone in an effort or based on a belief that she would be able to demonstrate what was said at lunch. So you would agree with me, you believe that there is a witness or information that may have popped up at lunch.
There's a recorded interview with her in the case, and I'm yet to receive the downloads of the phone, so I don't know what they contain.
Okay, well, has that phone been sent to for
It is.
forensic examination as well?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Officer, that's all I have. Thank you.
Wow. I mean, I just cannot believe some of the things I just heard. And you want to talk about the public losing confidence in investigators. That guy was, he's from the state police. You would think he'd be a little sharper than that. You know, he works for the Kentucky State Police, Clayton Stamper. He didn't know anything. He was never there for any major interview. Oh, I didn't do that one. Oh, I don't know about that. He didn't know about anything. He's the lead investigator. I mean, yeah, it just.
You wouldn't sit in with the other investigators helping you. Like there's I think there's 5 others, Collins, Bates, Caldwell, and at least one other. You wouldn't be sitting in and second seating them in an interview. You wouldn't have talked to them and gotten their thoughts. You got to wait until they.
How about read the case folder?
Yeah,
after all these people have been interviewed. You should have read the case folder 10 times already. It's been 2 weeks, right? You didn't read the case notes. You didn't read the result of interviews. What are you waiting for? Those surely are put to paper. They're surely on the case. They're surely in the computer. You didn't read those?
Right.
I think he was afraid to even bring that up because this guy is like, you know, he's 12 and a half RPMs on a 33 and a third RPM. You know, I mean, he's just, he's not hitting on all cylinders, this guy, you know? No. And it sounds like when you testify like that to ordinary civilians, it sounds like you're covering something up, especially when the person being investigated is a former cop,
right?
A fellow cop, I should say, you know,
right?
Not impressed with this investigation. Country bumpkins, they just cannot toss this to the FBI. Everyone always thinks that they could just say, hey, FBI, come in and take this over. They're not looking to take homicide cases over when the jurisdiction, and these are the state police. They should be impartial from a local sheriff's office. So the fact that this guy's not looking like, you know, the sharpest tool in the shed is, you know, it's more than that. That he admitted in court, oh, no, we didn't even try to interview him. That is like negligence 101. Like, are you kidding me? What do you mean you didn't try to interview him? Isn't that your job? You know? And you know something? I just couldn't even get over that. Look, the way it was done, and of course, we on the NYPD would not want to interview a fellow officer. So we have what's called the Rat Squad. That's what they were referred to as, the Internal Affairs Bureau. And they're referred to by fellow cops as the Rat Squad. So they would interview him. But what would happen is, because their competence in interviews wasn't high on the Richter scale, they would drag a member of Manhattan North Homicide Squad to sit in the interview with them, because a regular cop wouldn't want to have to. But they would do it. That's their job. They would have to do it. Anyway, Mike, we're going to keep following this case.
Yes.
I can't believe some of the stuff I heard today. This investigation is just like, wow. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Your final thoughts.
Bill, final thoughts. I just hope that when Stamper actually gets to read the case file and that we'll know more. The case is going to the grand jury now, and he'll be officially indicted, and then we'll move forward with the case. But we'll keep on track, on top of this, keep track of what's going on. But I understand when you see cases like this, why the public sometimes loses faith in law enforcement, the objectivity and the professionalism of law enforcement. And I say that with a heavy heart because, you know, you have a state police officer, state police detective, and you would think that they somebody who's brought out and assigned to a case like this would be, you know, top shelf, you know, top of the line detective. And it doesn't seem like that has happened. But we'll keep our fingers crossed and hope that justice for both, you know, Judge Mullins, and the sheriff will be had. So we'll see. Keep our fingers crossed.
Absolutely, folks. It pains me to criticize fellow law enforcement officers, but this detective, this investigator, Clayton Stamper, he didn't know anything. It's like every major interview, he wasn't there. He wasn't here. He didn't read the case folder. He didn't know the results of this. Cardinal sins: not taking the daughter's cell phone. That was never not taking the wife's cell phone, right? Not reading the case folder, not interviewing the sheriff. All those things are like investigation 101. Hard to believe. Anyway, folks, this is Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. Thank you so much for listening today, and we'll see you the next time. Have a great night, and God bless.
Good night.
One episode just ain't enough.